O Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadaatatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. So in the last class, we ended our discussion with the idea of Abhyasa and Vairagya, as has been spoken of in the Yoga Sutra, which, with the help of an example, Sri Ramakrishna is exemplifying in his words. We will read those words with which we ended our class in the last week, that the God's name, the context of these words is the God's name is the thing which entails in spiritual realization and liberation. But unless we have to a certain extent purified ourselves, just repeating the God's name may be of no avail. So as even in the Bible, we see that the purity has been given so much of importance. In the words of Jesus, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Swami Vivekananda used to say when he was in the West, that if all the scriptures gets destroyed and the religions have to start afresh, anew, and if somehow this one sentence of Jesus somehow remains, and he says that's sufficient. From that sentence alone, all the religions can again evolve. What's that? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Is this purification, which has been given so much of importance in all the religious tradition. And that purification speaks of purification of the mind. In the words of Ramakrishna, what he's saying that purification has to proceed to a certain extent before spiritual contemplation. Just spiritual contemplation without any endeavor for purification may be of no avail. So what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, a fever patient has an excess of the watery element in his system. What can quinine do for him unless that is removed? So in the olden days, when for the malaria patient, we find that as it affects the lymphatic system, all the lymph nodes are affected by malaria. So there will be extreme retention of fluid in the entire body. So the quinine, of course, is a medicine for malaria. But once one is infected by malaria and already the lymph nodes has got infected, and as a result, there's a swelling, the first thing is the removal of those watery element, which is very much required in the old medical system. That was the thing which was required first before you treat him with the quinine. So why Sri Ramakrishna is indicating this? That we are already being inflicted by so many desires. All those desires are like the watery element. We are obsessed by those desires, and unless we, to a certain extent, have purified our mind through the practice of vairagya, dispassion, detachment, abhyasa won't be of any avail. Vairagya means renunciation, abhyasa means practice. Repetition of God's name, in short, can be entitled as abhyasa, and restraining yourself from the obsessions which you have already developed is vairagya. So this should go hand in hand. The Vairagya is of importance, as we were indicating even in the last class, that if the human personality is compared with a will, then all these desires are like the spikes of the will. And our ego is like the hub of the will. When some of the desires are very prominent in my mind, first, of course, I have to get rid of them. Otherwise, the tranquility of mind cannot ensue. The tranquility of the mind, which I need, which is the basic thing for my spiritual practice, cannot ensue, cannot start unless my mind is tranquil. But there are innumerable desires, but not all are vyakta, not all have finding expression at a time. We know, as per the circumstances of life in which we are placed, a particular set of desires may be inflicting me. There are other desires which are hiding. If the situation changes, they may manifest. I don't know what all desires are. So if I have to take care of all the desires one by one, it is almost impossible to think of spiritual liberation. Then what's the way out? Because there are innumerable desires. What's the way out? Take care first of those desires which have manifested, vyakta vasana. Try to have restraint to a certain extent on those desires. How will it help? As so many times we have mentioned, that we can develop our willpower just the way we can develop our muscles. How we develop our muscles? We go to the gym, we work against the wet to develop our muscles with the idea that most probably the wets, working against the wet, helps to build our muscle. Actually, it's just the opposite. When you are working against the wet, your muscle cells are getting ruptured. They are getting damaged. It's not their building. It's only when you are resting, those ruptured muscle cells again starts reproducing, so that the muscle cells are regenerated. And when it is reproducing, now there's a brain in each and every cell. That brain is giving the feedback that these are the portions of the body which are used more nowadays. If you just reproduce the exact amount as it was previously, you cannot bear the stress because it's being used more. So that feedback actually entails the more number of division of cells, and that's how the muscle develops. So it's actually the negative feedback from the damaging of the cells that actually helps in building the muscles. The same thing happens with the willpower. If I suppose take the vow of fasting, for the first time when I'm fasting, by the noontime, by my lunchtime, I'm already hungry. And now most probably I have to fast for the entire night. And I feel it's almost impossible. But if I have patience, if I somehow try to delay my gratification, if I somehow to restrain, that I ignore the pangs of hunger. Those who fast, they all know. In 1 or 2 hours, suddenly you will find the pangs of hunger is gone. By late afternoon, the pangs of hunger is gone. And then you can continue with your fasting quite easily, almost throughout the night or till late night. And actually, it gives you a sense of lightness. What has happened? Why does the pang of hunger doesn't continue? Because here also the same feedback mechanism works. All the pangs of hunger is actually a biological alarm which impels you, that in the form of the pangs it is impelling you, it's time for food, you take food. If you ignore the alarm, biological alarm, it gets tired. After some time it gets tired, it stops. Now it won't disturb you for another few hours, it won't disturb you. And you can continue with your fasting. So this speaks of developing the willpower. We have an idea that we have to constantly fight with all our impulses. It's not the fact. Yes, we have to fight for some time. After some time, the body will get the message. This person is not going to yield. In no way he can be provoked. So the body is not going to disturb you anymore. Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel in some other place gives a very nice example. He says that suppose there is a river with a bend. A stream is coming down the mountains and it breaks into two streams. So that's how the bend of the river has been formed. That one stream coming down and bifurcates. So now if by a boat, if you start from one of the legs of that U structure of the river, one of the legs you start, for some time you have to exert a lot. You have to row your boat with full strength till you reach the bend. When you reach the bend, after that, you are in the favorable flow is, you get the advantage of the favorable flow. Now you just held the row to keep your direction. In one hand, in another hand, you can enjoy tobacco. That's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. It means you're totally relaxed. It's no more tormenting you. So once you have reached the bend, so all this struggle becomes something like a flow, spontaneous. I don't have to exert anymore. So that's what is required, and that's what is vairagya. And that when you have reached that flow, now your mind is calm. You're not fighting with them anymore. And now you can continue with the abhyasa. And that abhyasa is important. What you are doing, you are contemplating on the divine. If you are a jnani, you are contemplating on your real nature. Both has the same effect. When I'm contemplating on the divine, what is the idea? Who is contemplating? Is it this limited body-mind complex? No. I know I am eternal, my Lord is eternal, and my relationship with the Lord is eternal. So this is eternal companionship with the divine. So the moment I call on God, if I'm doing it not with any selfish motivation, oh, give me some more money, or give me with health, or give me peace in this life, and all those things that speak of just relating to your body-mind complex alone. That may be helping in this life to a certain extent. In spiritual sense, it is not going to help you in any way. This worship should always be this: worship the Spirit by the Spirit is the word of Jesus. The same idea is true for any religious tradition. All the Gayatri mantras speak the meaning of the Gayatri mantra. If I have to just translate all the Gayatri mantras in one line, it's the words of the Jesus. Worship the Spirit by the Spirit. What happens then? You're negating your limited psychophysical existence. That this limited I, the hub of your will, that you are negating. That has been constantly hammered. So through vairagya, I have tranquilized my mind by getting rid of those few desires that were manifested. But there are other innumerable desires. I cannot get rid of them one by one, for they have to be manifested, and then I have to take care of them. So many avyakta vasanas are there. How to take care of them? You have to get rid of the hub itself. So after this vairagya, you have removed the excess watery element. Now you take the quinine. God's name is the quinine. You take it, and that will entail in the hammering out of the hub, the ego, in the ego to which all the spikes are connected. Once you remove the hub, all the spikes along with the will collapses together, rendering you freedom. All this texture which the mind has formed by these innumerable desires in the process of evolution, all falls off at a time, rendering you free. So that's why in the last class we mentioned that the words of Ramakrishna are so simple. We read and we think we have understood, but we miss the point, because a tremendous subtle philosophy, there's a lot of philosophy is actually encrypted in just those two sentences. Now you find this sentence becomes so meaningful. A fever patient has an excess of watery element in his system. What can quinine do for him unless that is removed? Now let us proceed to the words of Ramakrishna, what he speaks next. Why shouldn't one realize God while living in the world? But as I said, one must live in holy company, pray to God, weeping for his grace, and now and then go into solitude. Unless the plants on a footpath are protected at first by fences, they are destroyed by cattle. So at the beginning, the fencing is required. In the Bhakti scripture, they speak of two types of Bhakti: Sadhana Bhakti, Sadhya Bhakti. What is Sadhana Bhakti and Sadhya Bhakti? In the words of Ramakrishna in a simple way, in some other place, with the help of nice simile, he have explained the Sadhana Bhakti and Sadhya Bhakti. What he's saying? That in a very hot, sultry weather, very humid weather, it is so stuffy. So to ease yourself, what you do? We use a hand fan to get rid of that stuffiness. You are using the hand fan. And suddenly the southern breeze starts blowing. And what happens? The hand fan falls off. There's no need for it. So now you will understand what is Sadhana Bhakti and Sadhya Bhakti. That as long as you're fanning yourself, that effort is required. Sadhana, you are endeavoring. And that has become spontaneous. When now this southern breeze has started blowing. So that the breeze which you were creating through effort now has become spontaneous. So there is no need of the fan. It falls off. So at the beginning, all those things which are bound to become spontaneous, it's not that I won't be in need of holy company when I realize. Ramakrishna, after realization, is to shout at the top of his voice from the top of the temple that, oh, the devotees, where are you? It is, he still hankers the holy company. But that hankering is a spontaneous thing. It's not that it cannot stay without it. He always has to, it's not that after realization is not praying. That has become spontaneous in his life. Being a realized soul, he's constantly praying, always taking the name of the Lord God, seeking company. Those things doesn't fall off. But what it indicates here, that they become spontaneous. They become like the southern breeze. There's no more effort required. At the beginning, you have to have that effort. It has to be a sadhana at the beginning to become spontaneous through that practice. And then you need not have any fear. It is not that you will be practicing. You will that you have to follow the practice. The practice will as if follow you. That you cannot stay without it. They become the part and parcel of your life. Your total personality gets overhauled. You will become a total transformed person. All those practices become the nervous association, as Swami Vivekananda used to say, that it's no more something which I have to practice willfully. They just become my reflex. I cannot stay without them. And that's why this, in the last class, I don't know whether we have indicated that there is a famous statement of Swami Vivekananda, that it is good to be born in a church, but it is horrible to die there. It's the same idea. What's good to be born in a church means, at the beginning, we need some fencing in the form of all those willful practices, prayers, holy company. So now and then going into solitude, all those we have to do willfully. And when you have got established, then there is no need even to go to the church. Even your own house will become the church, because wherever you may be, that your practice has become spontaneous. That's why a very nice sentence is there in our literature. They say, Tirthi kurvanti sadhava. We have an idea that Tirtha, the holy place, is full of that holy vibration. How did this vibration happen? It is not that the vibrations were there and we go and resort to it. How the vibrations, actually, that place has become full of this holy vibrations for ages together. People were going to that place for that purpose, for practicing spirituality. So it is Tirthi Kurvanti Sadhava. All the sadhakas have converted that place into a tirtha by their assiduous spiritual practice. So, and then when you go there, you find spirituality is something spontaneous, as is spontaneous. The wonderful, that the atmosphere of spirituality has been created. Whoever goes there automatically can avail it, can access it as if. So how it has happened? Through practice. So that's the thing. First, that practice is the hedge which we need to protect ourselves. And once the practice has become spontaneous, now it has started giving fruit. A plant starts giving fruit only when it has grown. If the plant has not started giving fruit, it means it is still a sapling. It has not grown. It still needs to be hedged. It needs to be protected. So that's the idea which we find Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. That why shouldn't one realize God while living in this world? It is possible. But as I said, one must live in holy company, pray to God, weeping for his grace, and now and then go into solitude. Unless the plants on a footpath are protected at first by fences, they are destroyed by cattle. So how nicely Sadhana Bhakti and Sadhya Bhakti is being described by this one line: unless the plants on a footpath are protected at first by fences, they are destroyed by cattle. The neighbor. Then householders too will have the vision of God, won't they? Master, everybody will surely be liberated. So liberation, freedom is our birthright. There is no one who is going to have that eternal damnation. No. All are going to be liberated. It's a wonderful idea we find in this Vedanta. All are going to be liberated. All those going to heaven and hell are temporary. As per our limited karma, all those results are also limited. Because of our bad karma, we may have to suffer for some time. For good, we of course will enjoy in higher planes, but that's limited. That will again bring us back to this world. And again, as a human being, we will have chance for the spiritual, this liberation. Till that happens, this going and coming will go on. We cannot stop that. But that's all temporary. The ultimate thing is all will be liberated. Freedom is our birthright. So this is the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. But the next thing what he's saying is very important. What is that? That everyone will be liberated. But one should follow the instructions of the Guru. If one follows a devious path, one will suffer in trying to retrace one's steps. Means all are bound to be liberated, but the timing is something which depends on our endeavor. If we are sincere, if we follow the path of the one who are already liberated, the Guru, who is already spiritually enlightened, we can accelerate the process. Otherwise, through experiences of life, through all sufferings, at last the renunciation is bound to come. Because the plan of the universe is such, if you go headlong to enjoy it, at last we are going to get kicks and sufferings. We are going to get suffering. We are going to get kicks. Today or tomorrow, we have to turn around. There cannot be any happiness in the world, however we may try. It will lead to more and more obsessions, complications, and we will find everything is becoming more complex. The way we just take that all the human relationships is going to give me happiness. Just see the world. Nowhere. The relations, wealth, nothing can give us happiness. At last, we have to turn around. That again, the story of the Bible, which we relate so many times, the story of the prodigal child is so important. What's the story of the prodigal child? That a rich man had two sons. The elder son was obedient. He's a devotee. He's obedient. The younger was the one who wanted that to be freed from the guidance of the father. He wanted to live a free life. So he claimed to his father that give the share of my property, that my elder brother and me both inherit what you have. Give me my share. I want to live an independent life. The father was not willing because he knew that he is not that mature. But as he was insisting, at last the property was divided and this young boy left. He was leading his own free life. But as it was inferred by the father, as anticipated, that's what happened. As he was not a responsible child, in short time he wasted all his money, his own share. He became a pauper, and now he didn't know what to do. So as there was no way out, there is no other way to sustain himself, there is no way. So again the thought of father came. But with that, the fear came. And that's just the way at the beginning we think God is there with a rod in his hand to punish us. That's the initial state of all the spiritual, the practitioners. They relate to God with fear, just the way this young boy was thinking. Most probably God is there to punish us. But as there is no other way, he started moving towards the village where his father stayed. From a distance, the father saw the son coming back. And that's how poetically described in the Bible. It is a father who ran and embraced the child, brought him back. And there was a huge feast to celebrate the homecoming of the child. So this speaks, everyone will be liberated. We have to turn around. We just have to turn around. Rest all is God's work. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you just move one step, God will come running 100 steps. That's the same story, the same idea. It is you have to just turn around. That's why Gopala is the one who is, you will find, is crawling with one hand extended. It is we who go with extended hand to God. But when I go to Gopala, we find it's just the opposite. It's the God who has hand is extended. The idea is he is eternally waiting. He is asking for our love. Just turn around. It is he who will come running. So everyone will be liberated. But when we turn around, that depends, that's the time. Some may take more time, some may just have that awakening bit early and resort to some tradition, the guru, those who have followed and already have turned around and got liberation. They have to, that will help them. Otherwise, he will be simply just going, that getting blows after blows till that awakening comes, that there is no way out. So everyone will be this liberated. But when we follow the instructions of the Guru, why? That as a human being, we have some uniqueness. That let us try to understand what's the uniqueness of the human being. So we have the faculty, no other creature have this faculty. And this faculty has actually resulted in all types of knowledge. What's that faculty? The faculty of dual representation. Dual representation. No other creature has. What? To understand this dual representation, unique faculty. Suppose a small child is playing in the backyard of his own house. And the father just goes there to see what his son is doing. And he finds that his son is playing with the branch of a tree. And the father approaches the son, and the son suddenly picks up the stick and says, "Don't come near. I am having a sword in my hand." It's just a childish game, but it speaks of a tremendous evolution. There is no other creature who can think a branch of tree as a sword. This is dual representation. From this, our language has developed. Just seeing a thing, the language is a dual representation. I am just representing the thing with the language. Mathematical notations. Everything speaks of this dual notation. And how it has helped? In a very short way. Just suppose a chimpanzee falls in a quicksand and it dies there. And then we find the chimpanzee's son, his grandson, everyone falls on the quicksand and dies. But how the dual representation has helped us as a human being. This dual representation has helped us to retain the knowledge in the form of script, in the form of notations. So there's need of only one signboard that don't proceed. There is a quicksand. That is sufficient. We don't have to do the same mistake again and again. So this actually speaks of the entire process of evolution. The biological evolution, if you see the way the child evolves in just 9 months in the mother's womb, the child to take the shape of a human being, it takes just 9 months. It starts from a single cell. In 9 months, it becomes a human being. And it's very interesting. You will find all the steps of evolution has followed there. At some step, we started from a single cellular organism. We were like fish. We had gills. We had tails. We had 2 chambered heart. It became 3. It became 4. All this thing speaks of the retracing of the entire process of evolution. That why we are the most evolved creature, because this is one way of seeing the evolution. That because we have retraced the entire process of evolution in a very short time, in 9 months. What took millions of years in nature to happen, that happens in the mother's womb in 9 months. It's called the theory of recapitulation. Ontogeny repeats phylogeny. The present generation ontogeny repeats phylogeny. All the predecessors, the way they have evolved, I follow all the steps. It's just like owning the computer. It's called booting up. One software, triggers the another. That triggers the another. That's why the computer takes, or laptop takes some time to get on. It's not just like owning the light. You just switch on, it just immediately gets on. In computer, you will find it takes some time. It's called booting. The way you have uploaded all the softwares, one will be booting the other will be booting. That's how it happened. The entire process of evolution speaks of this booting up. When the child is in the mother's womb, one after the other, the entire process of evolution, the way it has happened, is booting up. For human being, even after birth, the intellectual evolution follows. That's our characteristic because of this dual representation. Just see, for hundreds of years, the science has developed. What Newton discovered, what Einstein discovered, what all the scientists have discovered, it took hundreds of years. As a student, when I go to the school, just in 12 years, you learn what the scientists have discovered and invented for hundreds of years. So you find the same recapitulation is happening even after birth because of our intellectual evolution. And now you will understand the words of Ramakrishna, that why one should follow the instructions of Guru. Because they have already followed the path. And if I just follow them, it's again recapitulation, which the spiritual tradition took most probably a long time. But as I resort to that tradition, it can happen in a very short time. Just the way the recapitulation speaks of the entire evolution for millions of years happens in 9 months. Our intellectual evolution, we find, has happened in 12 years, which has taken in this so-called in the world for hundreds of years. Similarly, the spiritual evolution happens in the same way when we follow the instructions of the Guru. The entire tradition is just in front of us, experimented, documented. We just have to have faith and follow it. And then what happens? The entire process gets accelerated. Without that, there is a very interesting, there's a very significant statement that all will be liberated, even without following the religious tradition. All the so-called sufferings of life at last is bound to bring us to the spiritual tradition. But why to wait for that? As in English, that called this very oft quoted this passage is that wise learn through precepts, fool learn through experiences. Why should be a fool to learn through the experiences and just waste our time? Why not learn through the precepts? So now just see that what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that when he says that everybody will be surely liberated, immediately we shouldn't have that sense of complacency. Oh, if all are liberated, then what's the need of spiritual practice? Let me just enjoy the life. That liberation is after all waiting for me. So that's why the next sentence is important. But one should follow the instructions of the Guru. Why to waste your time? This through by getting all those these kicks from the life at last to turn around. Why not follow the instructions of the Guru? If one follows a devious path, one will suffer in trying to retrace one step. Again, he has to come back. The steps which he has followed to go away from his father, you have to retrace again. The farther you go, the farther you have to retrace back till you are in the vicinity of the father. So that's the thing which Sri Ramakrishna in so simple words is saying. So there's the importance of these traditions. With Shraddha, if I am so blessed to find the efficacy of it, and with respect, start my journey quite early in my life, it is I who am going to get benefited. My entire journey will be accelerated. It takes a long time to achieve liberation. A man may fail to obtain it in this life. Perhaps he will realize God only after many births. Sages like Janaka performed worldly duties. They performed them bearing God in their minds, as a dancing girl dances, keeping jars and trays on her head. Haven't you seen how the women in the northwest India walk, talking and laughing while carrying water pitchers on their heads? So you have to follow the tradition, and that too, all cannot think of resorting to the spiritual practices exclusively. We have our own entanglements. In spite of all those family entanglements, still spirituality can be practiced, and that's the art. That if you find that you are still being bound by the responsibilities, don't despair. That's the word of hope Sri Ramakrishna is saying. That don't think that all the problems be solved and then I will resort to spirituality. I cannot resort to spirituality now. If you have got the scope to have some exclusive spiritual practice, well and good. But all may not get that scope. We are in such situation that immediately we can never think of that exclusive spiritual practice. Then is there no way out? There is a way out. That's the art which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking. That if we can keep our mind fixed on God while doing other things, the practice of the presence of divine in our day-to-day life, in all the activities. Why he's saying all those things? Because when Avatara comes, when the divine incarnation comes, he gives hope to all. He never says that for you there is no scope. In whatever situation of life we may be, there is hope. There is a way out. It depends on how you, what's your yearning. If you really have a yearning, even in that situation, it is possible. It's actually not the external circumstances. It's the inner feeling which is more important. If you find that the situation is such you cannot come out of it, then he's saying that why not keep a part of your mind in God? It's not easy, but through practice, it is possible. And for that, he's giving the example. Just see that is it possible for any of us just to keep the jar on our head, even when no one is talking to us? If I am a novice, if I keep 2-3 jars, it is going to fall because I haven't yet practiced. But once you have practiced, now you can just walk, you can talk. A part of your mind is always keeping the balance. It's not going to fall. So what he's saying, that Sri Ramakrishna once went to the circus, and there he saw a lady standing on the back of a horse in one leg, and the horse is whirling around the arena. Not only that, now and then the horse was jumping, but the horse was running, and there were some rings. The lady was jumping through the ring and again falling on the back of the ground and maintaining her balance. That's what Sri Ramakrishna saw. And immediately he told that how come you say that spirituality is not possible as a householder? Just see, in such a turmoil, that such a tremendous focus she has, that there is no chance for her to fall. That she has become an adept in it. If in the physical world it is possible, why not in the spiritual world? Just as we think it is impossible, so it is impossible. If you think it is possible, it is possible. That all these circus feats would have been impossible if they thought it is impossible. They knew that it is possible, and through practice, they manifested it. And that's the thing Sri Ramakrishna is saying. In spiritual life, where the question was, is liberation possible as a householder? It is possible. If you should not think that it is impossible. The moment you limit your mind, it is impossible. If you think it is possible, just the way is all these feats these people are doing, just they knew it is possible and practiced, and it has happened. Similarly, this is possible. As Tulsidas says very nicely, that when we are in our day-to-day life, in our world, dealing with our worldly dealings of life, we have to take care of the responsibilities. We cannot say that I just simply leave off and go. So how nicely he says, sabse basiye, sabse rasiye, sabka lije naam, haji haji karte raho, baithe apna tham. Now never forget your tham, your own, the nodal point to which you have to hold. Never let go of that. Holding on to that, you just go on mixing with others, go on subscribing to their views as if it's not that really you're doing. To just avoid confrontation, you subscribe to others' view. Haji haji karte raho, you're subscribing to others' views. You converse with all, you enjoy as if with others, but always you are aware of your spiritual, this dimension. You never forget that. That is possible. As Sri Ramakrishna used to speak of the toothache. He used to say that when you have a toothache, whatever you may be doing, can you forget the toothache? It is always there. Others may not even realize that you are doing your work perfectly. Everything what you are supposed to be doing perfectly. Others even won't realize that you are having the toothache. But can you forget? Though a part of the mind is always there, just experiencing that ache. So God should become our toothache. And that is possible. And that's why he's giving these examples. Just see, in the physical world, can you do it? But they can do it. How has it happened? Just by practice, mere practice. As it is a necessity. They have to, in those northwestern part of India, it is the arid, dry area. Just to collect water for their day-to-day need, they have to travel a long distance every day. And that's in one jar of water is not sufficient. They have to carry many jars. How is it possible? So that's why this necessity made the impossible possible. They have practiced one jar after the other. When you keep a lot of load on the head, you can easily carry it. If you just try the same load to carry in your hand, it is impossible. But if you can carry in your head a huge weight, so they will keep this one jar after the other of water, because otherwise there is no water there. For long distance they have to walk. This necessity, and at the same time, they shouldn't be just renouncing the happiness of the life. So they are all walking together, gossiping, making merry, everything is going on. But a part of the mind is still there. They don't meet the balance. They won't fall at all. So if it is possible, why it is not possible to keep a part of the mind in God? As simple as that. That's the thing he's asking. When we say that in our day-to-day life it is not possible, the simple example with that Sri Ramakrishna is saying that if this is possible, why that is not possible? So perhaps that what he said, that they performed them bearing God in their minds as a dancing girl dances, keeping jars or trays on her head. Haven't you seen how the women in Northwest India walk, talking and laughing while carrying water pitchers on their heads? Neighbor, you just refer to the instructions of the Guru. How shall we find him? So that's again a pertinent question, that how to find a Guru. So Master, anyone and everyone cannot be a guru. A huge timber floats on the water and can carry animals as well. But a piece of worthless wood sinks. If a man sits on it, but a piece of worthless wood sinks if a man sits on it and drowns him. Therefore, in every age, God incarnates himself as the Guru to teach humanity. Satchidananda alone is the Guru. So here, what Sri Ramakrishna is saying is something very interesting. That in our spiritual life, through our spiritual endeavor, even we may get liberated. But that doesn't entail that all liberated souls are Guru. Some are liberated and just they are satisfied with their own liberation. Is they're liberated, they're satisfied with their liberation, but they cannot become like a huge conveyance, like a huge ship carrying many, many passengers. That's why the idea, that in Buddhism, one of the sects is Mahayana Buddhism. What that Mahayana means? The great vehicle. What happened after the death of Buddha? The mainstream of Buddhism was Theravada Buddhism. In that, the liberation was, the nirvana was highlighted so much that it appeared that my liberation alone is the be-all and end-all of my spiritual practice. In short time, the idea which developed among others is that, but see the life of Buddha, after liberation, he came down. It is not only pragya, not the knowledge, but karuna, the compassion that made him come down. And not only that, the idea of this bodhisattva. What is a bodhisattva? Develops from Buddha. The Buddha is the bodhisattva. And there should be other bodhisattvas who just not only thinks of his own liberation. He has the compassion enough to come down and become a Mahayana, a great vehicle to carry others along with him. So who can be a guru? The who has pragya. Pragya, of course, any liberated soul has pragya. But along with that, karuna, which makes him large-hearted. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a very nice story. The three friends were walking down the street and they saw a wall, a very tall wall. And they were curious to know what's on the other side of the wall. They managed to get a ladder. They kept the ladder on the wall, and one of the friends got up to see what's there on the other side. And when he was on the top of the wall, he became very ecstatic. He was just having he was just laughing and felt anyone can just feel that he was in ecstasy. The other two friends were curious. They were shouting, "What do you see that make you so ecstatic, so jubilant?" But he was so much engaged with what was going on the other side. He even never cared to respond, even to reply. He was simply overwhelmed by the joy the merriment which was going on the other side, and he jumped. So naturally of these two, they were curious to know that what made him so jubilant, so ecstatic. So the second one also got up, and he also made the same feat. Once he got up, he even couldn't resist to jump on the other side. He couldn't even just wait for some time to relate to the other friend that what's going on the other side. He simply jumped. So now there was no other way. The third one had to go up. And he also felt like jumping. But then the thought came, if I jump, no one will be there to relate what's going on the other side. So this entails in karuna, compassion. He comes down to relate to the world what is going on the other side. And he's the guru. So that all cannot become guru. That's why you will find that how these words, that's why we tell the words of Sri Ramakrishna are simple, but actually it speaks of a gamut of religious tradition. Just in Buddhism, you find that the idea of personal liberation, that evolved into the idea of this karuna, compassion. Then you become a big vehicle. It's not only your liberation. You think of others. This atmana mokshartham, jagat hitayacha. And as a human being, we all tend to be just absorbed in our own liberation. It is God who has to again and again incarnate to take care of the entire humanity by showing them the path which is followed by millions through millennium. That's what we find is that all the religious tradition, millions are following through millenniums, not only just for 2 or 3 years. That's the path they have. So they are the one who had compassion. That's why Guru is called the one who has ahayituki kripa. There is no reason for his compassion. That there is no personal interest. That in our life we find that whenever we are doing something for other, the question comes, there must be some this hidden personal interest. So this word ahituki means there is no interest as such. He is liberated. He has no as such any desires. Then why he comes down? Out of compassion. And that's why Sri Ramakrishna is saying that everyone cannot be Guru. A huge timber floats on the water and can carry animals as well. But a piece of worthless wood sinks. It itself can float, but something, if it's on it, it will sink. So that's what the difference between an ordinary liberated soul and the Guru or the Bodhisattva. That the one who has developed that compassion, he develops that capacity to take along with him the entire humanity as such. So that's the idea, Sri Ramakrishna, that along with pragya, that karuna should also develop. What is knowledge and what is the nature of this ego? God alone is the doer and none else. That is knowledge. I am not the doer. I am a mere instrument in his hand. Therefore I say, O mother, thou art the operator and I am the machine. Thou art the indweller and I am the house. Thou art the driver and I am the carriage. I move as thou movest me. I do as thou makest me do. I speak as thou makest me speak. Not I, but thou, but thou. So now we may feel that the words of Ramakrishna is a bit incongruous, as if after speaking of the Guru as the one who can take along with him the entire humanity, is speaking of becoming totally egoless, humble. After speaking of the tremendous strength, how can again just suddenly speaking of that humility? How you can relate? Now, when I think of the tremendous strength and avatar, we sometimes think that we have to become something. To give an example, after the passing away of Swami Vivekananda, when Swami Premananda, another direct disciple of Ramakrishna, was the manager of Belur Math, so he used to look after the novice, all the novice. So one of the novice one day, being inspired by life of Swami Vivekananda, Swami Brahmananda, he just told, they are so great. Isn't it that we also have to become as great as them? Like that, that's what should be our inspiration. And Premananda's answer was very significant. That you won't have to become something. Become nothing so that God can work through you. So now we will understand that the strength from where it comes, it is not your strength. The more you become humble, the more the ego falls off. It is the God who starts working through you. God has incarnated through you because you have totally eradicated your ego. And then the same person who appears to be fragile, weak, becomes as if inhuman. Through him, so much of work can be done. As we find Swami Ramakrishna and another direct disciple of Ramakrishna, he founded all the centers in South India, many centers, a stupendous amount of work he did in a very short time. And when someone is to ask, when is to say that Swamiji, what a tremendous amount of work you have done, how was it possible? And he used to say very nicely, does the pen ever say, I have written so many books? It's the author who is holding the pen. I am just the pen. There's someone who is the author, who is holding me. So that's the idea which speaks of the strength of the Guru, that he has totally eradicated his ego. He is himself free. And now it is the God who has made him his instrument, who is working through him. So that's the only thing in spiritual life we have to do, to cleanse our ego. There's a wonderful story in Vaishnava tradition that one day Radha was with Krishna. Radha just asked Krishna, was repenting, that see that how unfortunate we are, even that your inanimate thing, your flute, that is even is more fortunate than us. It always stays with you. You have tagged it in your belt. It is always with you. It never leaves you. But we can be in your company just for a short time, and then again there is viraha, again there is separation. Even that flute is fortunate. It is more fortunate than us. Then Krishna took out the flute and asked Radha to see through the flute, and asked, what is there? Nothing is there. So then Krishna told, you have to become like the flute. There should be nothing. We have to be like a hollow like the flute. And then only Krishna can play music through our lives. Then only he will blow that flute and the music comes out through our life. And that's the thing he's speaking. The Guru is one who has totally removed his ego. That stupendous work which he does in carrying the entire humanity along with him is not he. It's the God who is working through him. He is a mere instrument. So just see, the words of Ramakrishna is wonderful. It actually speaks of the subtlety of all the religious tradition in simple words. So with this, the second chapter also ends. From Prana Krishna's house, the master went to Colonel Vishwanath's, and from there to the lily cottage. So from there, so this here ends the second chapter of the Kathamrita of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The next class, we will again start a new chapter. So thank you all. Namaskar.